Hi, Dave Townsend, and today is August 16th, 2016.
So how long have you been in Strathmere?
Well, I guess since I've been about 5. My dad used to work for DuPont Company, and one of his co-workers, he was a lineman there, one of his co-workers had a trailer at the trailer park. So he invited my dad down, and he had a son, the fellow had a son about my age, so we spent one night in the trailer park. And it was in August, and it was about 1,000 degrees in that trailer, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience. But that's how we came here originally. And the next year we came down, and my parents rented a place in the old motel. My one sister wasn't even born at the time. My other sister was a baby. So there's 4 of us in a place with bunk beds, if anybody's ever been inside of those when they were still there. And then after that, we started renting, and we rented from the Grabbies on Bayview Avenue, and we rented from them for many years. I kind of grew up with Barbara and Tom Grabby, and coincidentally, as most people probably know, we just bought their property last year and building a new house there. So it's interesting how I've made full circle.
So who were some of your other childhood friends? You were contemporaries with?
Well, when we were staying at Grabby's, Frank's was right next door, of course. And at the time, Frank was one of the older guys, but Steve was about my age. And Steve and I, well, he used to go out minnowing, and I used to go out with Steve, and that's kind of how I learned a little about the creeks and learned how to minnow, I guess. And at that time, we would just go out. Our parents didn't even know where we were half the time, and if we were even coming back. But and of course, my sister's spending time with them. But that's the very early times. I was probably 10 or 11 years old at that time.
And primarily, you spend your time fishing or on the bay?
Well, we loved that place because it was on the bay and we could fish off the dock. And I remember one time my mother was fishing off the dock, and my dad was known to spend a few hours in the Deauville Inn. And of course, you can see the dock at Grabby's place at that time. You could see the dock from the Deauville. So my dad tells a story about sitting at the bar, and my mother is out on the dock fishing off the dock, and she caught a really big flounder. And everybody's saying to my father, whose name was Milt, they said, "Milt, you better get over there and help your wife." And of course he didn't. So what she did is she took the flounder, got up on the deck, put a bucket on top of it, and sat on the bucket till someone came to help her.
That's a great fish story. And the Townsends, you're related to the Townsends of Townsend's Inlet?
Well,
How's that work?
The story goes, it's interesting. Allegedly, the first white settler in Cape May County was John Townsend, and he settled in the, I guess, the early 1600s here. He came from Oyster Bay, New York, and because of persecution of the Quakers at that time, he said, "Well, I'm out of here." And he came down to Cape May County, swam his cattle across the Egg Harbor River there, and settled right outside of Sea Isle City. And if you go out Route 9, go out Sea Isle Boulevard, make a left, and there's Magnolia left on the left-hand side. And the Townsend House actually still exists. It's right across the Magnolia Lake. It's been added to over the years, of course, but it's the oldest house in Cape May County. They had the first religious service there. The first child was born there. There's actually a book on architecture that a lady architecture writes about the historical architecture, and she went into that house and found the original part of it and shows all the axe marks about how they built it with the axe. And I believe with the help of the Indians, he built the house. And he also created Magnolia Lake. He dammed up a creek that was there, and there was also a grist mill and a sawmill right there on that creek. And but anyway, I don't know how you create a lake, but he created Magnolia Lake. And of course, if you look at Google Earth, you'll see that there's a creek that runs out to Townsend Sound. Townsend Sound goes out to Townsend's Inlet, and that was all our property. John Townsend had 2 sons, and I'm from the Robert side, and he became one of the biggest landowners in the county. I don't know a whole lot about Robert, but I do know that his brother Richard owned 663 acres of Peck's Beach, which of course is Ocean City, and what he used it for was he had cattle. So instead of building fences on the mainland, he would just swim his cattle over to Ocean City, Peck's Beach, and leave his cattle there. It's a barrier island; they're not going anywhere. So when he wanted them, he'd go over and get them.
Really?
But I would love to have 663 acres of Peck's Beach today, because that would be in the billions. You figure 8 houses per acre, and add all that up, boy.
Wow. I'm still picturing the cattle swimming across. That's wild. That's
Yeah,
such a
yeah,
distance.
yeah.
And then recently you said something about working with a historical society.
Because our heritage, it comes back to Cape May County. The Cape May County Historical Society is over on Route 9, and we support them. I mean, not only we go to John and then Robert, but there were a couple of others. There was Elijah and Elijah. They were both lawyers in the county. One of them was actually some type of coordinator for the Revolutionary War, and then it goes on to one of my great-grandfathers named Jehu, Jehu, and he was a captain of a schooner called the R. Tomlin out of Cape May. And the reason I was able to find all this genealogy is when my great-aunt died, who lived in Pennsville, New Jersey. She left me a family Bible, and this Jehu was the first entry in the Bible. So, and he was lost at sea in the Gulf of Mexico. And that's the first entry in this Bible. And I was able to go over to the Cape May County Historical Society and find him, which made it very easy to go all the way back to John, who was, quote, the original, allegedly first settler in Cape May County. So we've been working with the Cape May County Historical Society. They actually needed some more room, so we got a building for them. It's over there. You'll see it behind the museum. It's called the Townsend Carriage Shed, and we donated that to them. And there was a big dedication for that with Lobiando and Vandrew and so forth when we donated that. And they also have a really neat art exhibit, an art auction every year in September, which benefits the society. So we usually support that, and I usually give them some of the photographs that I take, and the lifeboat photographs. And then they recently came up with some pretty historical, I don't know what you call those things, the things that the ladies used to sew, the young girls used to sew, and taught them how to sew, and it would have different letters and so forth.
Samplers?
What are they called?
Samplers?
Yeah, samplers. They recently came up with a very good exhibit of those, and they needed a way to display them, so we donated the racks and so forth that they used to display them. So, it's our heritage, and we would like to support people that are continuing to teach people about the heritage of this county.
Well, you also have a claim to fame, something about freckles.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's.
I remember part of that story.
Yeah, well, that doesn't have a lot to do with Strathmore, other than probably I
Strathmore.
couldn't come down that weekend. But I grew up with Riverview Beach Park in my backyard, which is in Pennsville on the Delaware River. And when I say my backyard, there was a fence that separated. And one year they had a freckle contest. So, my buddies, I think I was 9 at the time, and my buddies said, well, you got to join. I've lost a lot of them, obviously. But so I entered, and I won what was called the National Freckle Contest. I still have the trophy. In fact, it's right downstairs. I should have brought it up. I still have the trophy. My picture was in the paper all over the country. In Canada, people were sending me my picture that was on the front page of the Pasadena Times or the Quebec News or whatever. Some of them said, hey, if you send us 10 cents, we'll send you your picture. And some of them just sent me the picture.
So, can you tell me some of your favorite fishing spots?
Well, I usually fish back in the. Let's just talk about flounder. The spots are pretty well known to everybody. I like to fish back off the Intercoastal and right up here in Flounder Alley. In my younger days, we used to go out in the ocean and fish a lot. And a big place to fish out there for us at the time was the Sea Isle Ridge, which is about 18 miles out. And that was always a great place. I used to go out with Jack Clements, or sometimes we take 2 boats, sometimes we'd be on the same boat. And We used to do great with bluefish out there. You can almost count down when they were going to start hitting the closer you got to the ridge, so we'd fish our way in. Everybody knows Jack Clements, and one of my great stories with Jack, great fishing story is I had a 24-foot Grady at the time. He had a 24-foot Grady. Mine was a center console. His was an overnighter, they call it. So one day we were going to go fishing, and we went out in my boat, but we needed some oil. So Jack says, well, Dave, go get the oil in my boat. We'll put that in your boat, and then we'll just replace it. So we did that, and it was fine. So the next day, we're going to go out in Jack's boat, and we're going to go out to the Jacob Jones and fish, which is 45 miles. So we get out, we fish, we troll around, we're coming back, and his oil buzzer starts going off. So Jack says, Dave, go get that oil and put it in there. And I said, Jack, you mean the oil that we used in my boat yesterday that we never replaced? So now we're 40 miles out in the ocean with our oil buzzer going off, reading the manual, trying to figure out how fast we can go, how many RPMs we can go without blowing up the engine, and then, of course, how many hours or days it's going to take us to get in at that low RPM. So we got on the radio, we called for some other boats. There were no outboards around, a couple inboards, nobody had any oil. So there was a boat that was approaching, and it was an outboard, and we called on the radio, and there was no response, so we decided to hail them. So we hailed them, and the guy came over and said, were you hailing us? And we said, yeah. We said, we're having a problem, we're out of oil, and would you have any oil on board? And he did. And it turns out the fellow's name was Sam Still. He was from Pennsville, where I grew up. He was my sister's neighbor. He was a big diver. I mean, he dove on the Andrew Doria many, many times, had all kinds of artifacts. And he did have oil for us, so he gave us a bottle of oil. We were able to get in at a reasonable time. He basically really saved us a lot of hassle, and we bought him a case of oil the next day.
Yeah, so we miss Jack, and there are a lot of people in town that we miss too. And it's one of the reasons why we lost Ollie Twist, we lost Ted Bamford, you lost a lot of I'm sure you've lost a lot of firefighters over your life. Can you think of some other pals you had?
Most of my pals at that point were, fishing club people, and the fishing club came about in 1985. And the thing about the fishing club, there are lots of different stories about how it started. So I'm not going to get into that because everybody has their own story. I can tell you I was there, but we'll let everybody have their own story. But one of the reasons it started is we started getting together fishing, and we started the Bluefish tournament. And we used to have 45 boats in the Bluefish tournament. I've got videos of that where we've got 45 boats coming up the bay, going under the bridge to get out to the inlet for a shotgun start. I mean, it was awesome. And then we also started Nightmare in Strathmere. And so we've got this parade going, and we've got this tournament going, but there's no income coming in, and pretty much Jack and I were taking money out of our pockets to run these events. So Jack says, Dave, we should start a wishing club. And I said, how are we going to get in a fishing club? What are we going to get, 10 people, 15 people? Oh, no, we can probably get 20 or 30. I said, I don't know where they're coming from. So this went on and on. But eventually it did get started, and then we thought, well, okay, we can charge dues, and then we don't have to take the money out of our pockets anymore. The cool thing about the fishing club is, you know people, you wave to them, and I say, you wave to them in their boats. You wave to people as you're out fishing, but you really didn't know them. And the fishing club brought everybody together, and now you know everybody. You have a common interest, and I've been involved with a couple of rescues where it's people help, it's friends helping friends, people helping people. You need something, you're having a problem, we're going to come and help you. You don't have to call CETO. And we had one situation that was 40 some miles out in the ocean, and one of our members had a problem, and we helped them. Anyway, it's been really good, and it's actually grown from, gee, can we get 30 or 40 people to, I don't even know, 150 people, or with financially doing well off and running a lot of worthwhile events.
And the environmental part, was that always part of it?
Yes, it was always part of it. We're a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We worked hard for that. And the idea was, we can't just be let's go have fun and party organization. We have to have a purpose. And part of that purpose has become trying to get kids interested in fishing, but the environmental end of it became a big deal. And we got involved with the ospreys, and we got involved with beach cleanups and putting up snow fence in the early days, and putting up dune grass in the early days. I know the township does a lot of that stuff now, but we did it when nobody else would. Nightmare started in 1985. We decided to have a boat parade. Again, there's some controversy. Everybody says it was to mock Ocean City and Nights in Venice, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we just decided to have a boat parade. There was 1 year, I ran it for about 15 years, and there was 1 year when I think we had about 40 boats in Nightmare. And that was actually the year after Jack died, and it was almost like a tribute to him.
I remember.
And it was really pretty spectacular. I mean, there were a lot of boats, a lot of good themes. There was never any specific theme. It was always just do your own thing. I know the first year everybody seemed to be either Christmas or Halloween. But then Mike and Margot really, they were very heavily involved for several years there, and they were always awesome. Of course, now you've got Gar and his guys. They're the guys that seem to be taking over on the creativity, and they're everybody's a winner in Strathmere theme. But I think it's become a fun thing. It's been pretty controlled. Nothing gets too crazy. Nobody gets hurt. We've always asked people to be. Have your boats properly lit if you're going to be out at night, and to make sure somebody's responsible on the boat. We've tried to keep that safety theme, but as it is today, I think most of the time it's done before it's dark.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Sandy too, because that's when you and I met, or I met you before, but when I got to know you better, and I was sort of searching for what I could do to help, and you came up with the idea, I think, of a fellow fishing club member who needed help, and sort of sparked the whole surf relief.
Yeah, well, that's I try to bring people together, and some people threw me under the bus. But it is what it is. The bottom line is the result, the end result worked out really well. I do want to tell a story I'll tell two stories about Sandy. One is being a first responder, I was able to get back in the next day early on, and there was stuff all over the place. And especially floating docks. I mean, there were floating docks all over, not where they were supposed to be. So one of the fellow that lived in town at the time was a contractor, and he had a backhoe, and he said we could use it. So Herb Hollinger, George Welker, and myself took this backhoe, and we just started going down the streets and picking up floating docks and trying to put them back where they belong, in the yards they belonged in. I mean, Herb had a whole, probably a 50-foot dock up against his house. There were a few other houses that had floating docks up against them and in them. So we spent the entire day moving floating docks. And I do have to say that the township, I know we've all had our disagreements and things with the township, but they did an outstanding job during Sandy. They had dumpsters in town, and they were emptying those dumpsters multiple times a day. People had all kinds of wet things, mattresses, rugs, furniture, you name it. And there was always a place to put it. So we worked really hard that day, the three of us, as I'm sure other people did, but we were just trying to help others. I was in pretty good shape. I had a little bit of water in my house, but it wasn't in a living area. So, I figured I can take my time and help others. And Herb and George were the same way. So we worked our way down, and we got down to Sophie's house down here near the Deauville, and she had piles of floating docks in the bay in front of her house. So we started working on those, and then it got to the point where we were just whooped. So we said, Soph, we'll be back tomorrow, and we've done all we can do today. Well, the next day we got back, and the guy came to get his backhoe. He needed it. So we weren't able to finish. We weren't able to go back and help her, but she appreciated what we did. In fact, I think bought each of us a case of wine for helping her out. And I do want to tell the other story, which is really kind of neat about Tom Leonard. We all know Tommy Leonard, and Tommy is a fellow that lived by himself in a low house down on Prescott, and he not Prescott, Prescott. Well, wherever he lives, you all know where he lives. So Tommy lost everything and can't live in his house. But his friend Pierre said, who lives in Egg Harbor Township, said, Tommy, you can come live with me, and while you're working on your house. So Tommy is now making this half-hour or so trip back and forth every day to go stay with Pierre, then to come back and work on his house and go stay with Pierre. And he's got this old pickup truck. So anyway, to take this story and then I'll bring it all together for you. I was at Mike Trout's house. We all know Mike Trout, the baseball player from Millville, and I'm involved with the baseball organization. So we were having our banquet, and I needed some memorabilia for auction. So I go to Mike Trout's house, and Mike Trout's mom gives me some things. And then she says, Dave, do you know anybody that needs any tires? I said, tires? She said, well, Michael made that catch in front of the Yokohama tire sign, and it was the catch of the year, and I'm sure you've all seen it. And Yokohama was so happy they want to buy him tires or have him donate tires to some charity of his choice, and he hasn't picked one. So do you know anybody? And I said, well, let me get back to you. So I went to see Tommy, and I said, Tom, how are the tires on your truck? Because I know you're going back and forth to Pierre's house. He says, bald. So I called Mrs. Trout. Mrs. Trout says, let me have the Angels get in touch with you. So I get a call from the California Angels, or the Anaheim Angels. And they said, Dave, I hear you need some tires. I said, I don't need any tires, but here's the story. Does that fit your criteria? And they said, that's perfect. So now if you ever see Tommy Leonard driving around in his old pickup truck, the tires are thanks to Mike Trout's catch where he brought that home run back from Prince Fielder in front of the Yokohama tire sign. He probably should have had them all signed and sold them. He could have bought 3 new trucks if he'd have done that.
Any other old-timers that we should talk about?
Well, no. I mean, there's a lot of people that have, moved away for one reason or another. I think, it's getting to be an expensive place to live otherwise, unfortunately. That's another whole subject. I mean, I don't think we're treated well by the township. We've got so many bad roads right now, and if they have some paving material left over, they may come fix a pothole if we're lucky. But we certainly pay our fair share in taxes. So anyway, there's a lot of people that have had to leave, because it's a very expensive place to live. I don't think you'll ever see any young families come into town because, you can't start out paying tens of thousands of dollars in taxes every year, and that's a shame.
So where's your favorite place to eat dinner in town?
I would say my house. I frankly don't mind it. I just think that probably the toughest thing is going out if you want to go out to eat. There's really not a lot of places open. You can go to Ocean City, and that's okay, but even, a lot of those are limited. So there's not a lot of places to eat, and you have to travel a little bit to get your groceries. And, if you need something, you got to run up toward the Hamilton Mall or down to Rio Grande, down that way. But it's not bad. I mean, it's actually interesting to me. I mean, I love the winter when, you can lie down, take a nap in the middle of Commonwealth Avenue and never get hit by a car. I think it's awesome.
Anything else? Any other stories?
I think
how about
good.
Were you here for any of the big? I know there was a fire at Weaver's and at Kruger's house.
I was not here for that. I wasn't even in the fire company at that time, but I was involved with the fire on Sherman, which was last year. And we've had several accidents. I mean, I can tell you. I mean, we're getting into the township stuff, but a couple of the crazier things is number one, it's a Deauville. I can't believe they just let them do the things that they do and have no concern for the residents, no consideration for the residents. I mean, one of the things is when they put a deck on this beach bar, I got the variance notice 2 years after the deck was up. So, did I know that they were going to, do what they did in this yellow house? I never got the notice about the meeting. I don't know anything about that. I think they just did it. But one of the things I think it should be looked at is the parking on the bridge. You know, as you come down the bridge, I think that's an accident waiting to happen. Because when we pull out of here, you know, we live, you know, of course, north of the blinker, and we pull out, there's that sharp look that you have to make to the right, and there's a cars parked right there. You can't see, and that's just not good. And then people coming off the bridge. I mean, there's very little room on both sides, and they have cars parked on both sides. But just not being able to see coming off that bridge is crazy. I mean, they ought to, you know, take 3 or 4 of those parking spaces and allow people to view. You know, I hear the township wants to put.
That would be a county. That's a county.
Is it the county?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, all right. I mean, I hear they're all about safety. They want to put these new bumps in the road over on Route 50 or something because it's safety. Well, if you're going to talk about safety, it's a whole lot more dangerous than needing bumps in the road. Trust me. And most of the things I've been involved with have been accidents. You know, I'm at this point, you know, pretty much a traffic guy. I don't not able to lug hoses around or anything like that anymore. But you know, there's been a lot of accidents up on Commonwealth where people leave their doors open, and then guys riding bikes. I mean, one guy, you know, if he wasn't wearing a helmet, he wouldn't have made it. And I used to run the safety day for the fire company, and I was going to use his helmet and his bike. This fella, somebody opened the door, he went flying over, hit his head, cracked his helmet, wrecked his bike, and the helmet and bike were sitting in a firehouse for a long time. And I was going to use him for a safety day, and the day before the guy came and got him. So, but the point was, he's lucky he's wearing a helmet. And, you know, there's people along this street there, they don't, I mean, their kids are running around. It's really, really crazy. I won't let my family ride their bikes up there on weekends towards Seattle. It's just too dangerous. And we've had some water rescues, which I've been involved in, and you know, thank God we have Brian Riordan and Morgan Delaney. You know, those 2 guys are, you know, they're in the water pretty quick to come after people, and that's when the lifeguards aren't here. I mean, when the lifeguards are here, that's great, but you know, we're talking about September. There's no lifeguards, and if you're still here, you know, we have situations where, you know, we've had to go get people.
So, were you here when the water tower was built? Or was
Yes. Yes.
And do you know the story of? I've heard 2 versions of the story: that we were not supposed to be hooked up, that they were just going to leave us, or that we were already in the plan.
No, I'm not sure about that. I don't know about that. Anything I can know about the water tower is 2 things. One is when it was the old water tower and the top wasn't on there, they put like a big black tarp over top of it. And that might have been the first or second nightmare Jimmy Callahan's seen. He went and got 2 55-gallon drums, painted them baby blue, and put a black trash bag on top, and it was perfect. I mean, it was a miniature version of our water tower. And the other thing is, you know, I remember when we, you know, we always said we didn't want to have our name on a water tower. You know, that old thing about, you know, don't tell anybody about Strathmere and all that. And they decided they were going to paint the water tower, and they take the tarp off, and lo and behold, here it says Strathmere Upper Township. So we got slapped in the face with that one.
So, can you tell me what you think is the biggest change in town, and what you think stays the same and that keeps you here?
I could say what keeps me here is probably the people. You know, made some, you know, great friends, and the great thing about this town, as I see it, is people are willing to help you if you need help, whether it be financially, whether it be there's work you need done, you're in trouble, whatever it may be. People are there to help you and give you whatever assistance they can. You know, post Sandy, I think, was an example of that. Not just in as far as labor goes, but financially. I mean, when they started that fund, that helped a lot of people that really needed help, and you know, these are our neighbors. So I think the people are here are great people, and probably one of the neatest things about it is it doesn't matter if you're a Donald Trump or if you're a street person. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what you do. Nobody cares what your financial status is. We're just all people. You know, we're all Strathmerians, and that's the thing I think is really, really terrific. And the location, the fact that we are not, there aren't a lot of high rises. There aren't a lot of commercial. There's not a lot of commercial things here, and that kind of keeps us a little more quaint. Not as quaint as we used to be. Houses are getting bigger. They make you go higher, so they have to give you more room at the top. I'm one of the guys that's taking advantage of that, and I'm taking everything they'll give me. So that's changing, but it's going to change. And even though I may be the first or second house that's under these new rules after Sandy, every house that's going to be built from now on is going to be like that. It's the new norm.
So you're going to be bayfront. How many feet did you have to go up?
Well, I had to be up 10 feet.
10 feet?
Yeah. It's actually 11. Well, I am up 10 feet. FEMA says 10 feet. Upper Township says 11 feet. So anyway, so you had to go up that much further.
11, right.
Yeah, and then, I don't even know what the limit is, but there was a height limit, as we all know. But they had to give you more room on top. Plus, they measure from a different area now.
Right.
So.
And how about your bulkhead? How high does that have to be?
My bulkhead is the highest bulkhead in town. My bulkhead is 10 feet high. And I know that I guess there's a new ordinance saying if you do anything in your bulkhead, it has to be a certain height. I'm not sure what that is, but I know that the township bulkheads are not meeting those requirements. But I guess if you do anything, you have to bring it to that height. But the crazy thing about all that is there's a house that's for sale right now in Strathmere down on the bay, and it doesn't have a bulkhead. It's one of two in town that don't have a bulkhead. 35 years ago or more, I tried to buy that house, and I walked out on the dock. There was no bulkhead, and there was some grass growing there, and the fellow that lived there used to cut that grass with his lawnmower when he cut the rest of his grass. Well, he's selling his house, so he hadn't cut it. So we have an offer on the house contingent on being able to put a bulkhead in. If I can put a bulkhead in, I'm going to be helping the whole town. I'm going to, helping prevent flooding there. So this grass, they consider this grass to be part of the wetlands because the guy hadn't cut it down. If he had cut it down, they wouldn't even know it was there, So it's part of the wetlands, and I stood out on the dock, and the place was a different place at the time. It was an old, beat-up place. The dock was beat up. Stood out on the dock with the DEP, the EPA, the township, the county, and Bruce Riordan. And they're saying, well, I think we should let him put a bulkhead here. And the other guy said, well, I think we should let him put a bulkhead here. And the other guy said, well, I don't think we should let him put a bulkhead in at all. Well, it turns out they'd said you can't put a bulkhead in. So it's funny here, they're telling you can't put a bulkhead here, but you got to have a bulkhead that's so high. So I don't know. I don't know if you're allowed to put a bulkhead there now or not. I'm not really sure. But you can't put a bulkhead in, but if you have one, it's got to be a certain height. It just makes no sense to me at all. I wanted to tell, as I talk about helping people, I wanted to tell a story about an interesting rescue that we had. We were renting a house next to Bonzel's down on the bay, and my son was actually in a high chair at the time. And we were feeding him, my wife and I were feeding him, and there was a knock at the door. And I opened the door, and here were two Coast Guard guys there. And they said, hey, do you have a boat? And I said, well, yeah, I got a boat. And they said, could you take us over to the sandbar? There's been an accident over there. And I said, sure, I can do that. And they said, by the way, would you have any radios? So what do you mean, like VHF radios? Yeah, like handheld VHF? I said, yeah, I got a couple of those. So here I am with the Coast Guard, and I got my two radios and my boat. My son is in a wheelchair. And he said, can you take us over to the sandbar? Someone's been injured over there. And I said, well, my wife's a physician. Maybe we should take her also. And they said, that'd be great, yeah, if you could do that. So we had to run next door and get young Jerry Bonsall to come over and watch our son. And we got these guys in a boat. We took it over. It's where everybody clams now. That when I say sandbar, it's around the corner there where everybody clams as you go up the main channel. And here a boat had been speeding and ran aground, and a lady had been thrown forward into the boat, and she was injured. So we got over there, and my wife spent some time with her, and the Coast Guard helicopter shows up. So the helicopter is hovering above, and it drops the gurney down, and they put the lady on the gurney and get her all secured, and they start lifting her up. and she starts sliding out of the gurney as it starts going up like head first. So they got to bring her back down, redo it again. And anyway, they finally got her up and took her away, and I think they airlifted her to Atlantic City, and she turned out to be fine. And then my wife and I got a letter from the Coast Guard thanking us for our radios, our boat, our medical expertise, and there was a lot of typos in that